and fulfilling.
You won't believe what a single photograph can reveal. 3 weeks ago, a groundskeeper at a small, unassuming cemetery outside Birmingham did what he thought was a simple, mundane thing. He snapped a picture of a grave and posted it on social media. Nothing fancy, no dramatic lighting, no fanfare, just a simple granite stone nestled among the rows of others, humble, quiet, and entirely unremarkable. Or so it seemed. Within hours, that single photo ignited a firestorm across the globe. Fans, journalists, and even the rock community itself were left stunned, because the name carved into that stone wasn't what anyone expected. It didn't say Ozzy Osbourne. It didn't say Prince of Darkness. It didn't even say John Michael Osbourne, rock legend. It said something so simple, so profoundly human, that it made Sharon Osbourne weep the first time she saw it. 6 words. That's all. John from Birmingham. He tried his best. Nothing else. No dates, no accolades, no mention of Black Sabbath or millions of albums sold. Just those 6 words quietly rewriting everything the world thought it knew about Ozzy Osbourne. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who had spent half a century living larger than life, creating chaos, thrilling stadiums, shocking the media, and defining a generation of rockers, was choosing to rest as someone almost nobody would recognize. Fans erupted online. Some called it fake. Others demanded proof, accusing Sharon of cheapening his legacy. The idea that the Prince of Darkness would want to be remembered as just a man was incomprehensible to millions. Then more photos surfaced. Photos that were never meant to be seen by the public. Caught by family, private moments frozen in time. Sharon kneeling beside the grave, whispering to a man who was no longer physically present, yet still profoundly alive in memory. It was in those images that the truth emerged. This was not a mistake. This was not some cost-cutting measure. This was exactly what Ozzy Osbourne had wanted. Few knew until now that Ozzy had been planning this for 7 years. 7 years of secret meetings with Sharon, private discussions that were never shared with their children, not even in passing. He hadn't woken up one morning and decided, I want a simple grave. This was meticulous, intentional, the culmination of decades of thought. Every detail, down to the wording, the stone, even the absence of dates, was part of a statement only he could have orchestrated. And it wasn't about obscurity, it was about honesty, about finally being remembered as John from Birmingham, the boy from the factories and the grim streets of the city he loved, not the rock god who conquered the world. The photos revealed something even more striking. Surrounding that modest headstone were tributes that defied all expectations of a rock star's final resting place. There were no guitars, no bottles of whiskey, no Black Sabbath memorabilia. Instead, visitors had left handwritten notes. Thank you for showing me it's okay to be different, one read. Drawings from children who felt like outsiders. Sobriety chips left by those inspired by Ozzy's battle with addiction. One note written by a mother from Manchester read, My son has autism and gets bullied at school. When he heard your music and learned your story, he stopped being ashamed of being different. Thank you for saving my boy. These were messages not about fame or fortune, but about survival, humanity, and connection. And then came the photo that would haunt fans and family alike. Sharon Osbourne, kneeling before the grave, speaking softly, almost reverently, as if Ozzy were still there, listening. Her lips moved, captured by a long-range lens. I kept my promise, John. I kept every single one. That promise was far deeper than a simple burial request. It was a vow to honor the man beneath the persona, the person who had lived in shadows behind the stage lights, who had loved and hurt, who had struggled with demons nobody could see. Sharon had fought fiercely to fulfill that promise, resisting record labels, city officials, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and even her own children, all of whom wanted a grand monument to Ozzy Osbourne, the legend. But Sharon knew that what Ozzy truly wanted wasn't grandeur, it was peace, authenticity, and finally, a place to be himself. The fallout within the Osbourne family was immediate and explosive. Just 3 days after Ozzy's funeral, Sharon convened a meeting with Jack, Kelly, and Amy. What began as a quiet family discussion quickly spiraled into chaos. Jack, confronted with the reality of the simple headstone and the rejection of a monumental rock shrine, exploded.
Are you kidding me?
He shouted, pacing. Dad spent 50 years building a legend and you're going to bury him like some nobody? Kelly accused Sharon of manipulation, of exploiting Ozzy's declining health to push her own agenda. Amy, who had stayed largely out of the public eye, revealed the truth that only she knew. Ozzy had been speaking to her privately for over a year, laying the groundwork for his final wishes and asking her not to tell the others. He was tired, she explained, of living as a character instead of a human being. Sharon produced the evidence. Handwritten letters, voice recordings, video messages, all meticulously prepared by Ozzy himself, anticipating this very confrontation. In one recording, Ozzy's voice is fragile but unwavering. "Jack, if you're hearing this, it means your mother kept her word. I need you to trust that your old man knows what he's doing one last time." Kelly's anger faltered when Sharon played a personal message from Ozzy, recorded specifically for her. "Princess, I know you want your daddy to be remembered as larger than life, but the only life that mattered was the one I lived with you and your mom. The rest was just a show." To understand why Ozzy wanted this, one has to step back to his early life in Birmingham. The child who grew up under the weight of a factory worker father who never lived to see him succeed carried a lifetime of unresolved pain. His father's dying words were never, "I love you" or "I'm proud of you." They were, "Try to make something of yourself, John, don't end up like me." 50 years later, Ozzy had spent a lifetime trying to prove himself to a man who had already loved him simply for surviving. Fame, fortune, chaos, all the outrageous headlines. These were armor, a shield for a boy who thought he would never be enough. And then came the dream. Late nights haunted by visions of the Birmingham cemetery, searching desperately among endless rows of headstones. He would call out to his father, "Dad, I made something of myself. Where are you?" And in that dream, he finally found the grave. But the headstone was not his father's. It bore the words that would eventually define his own final resting place. John from Birmingham. He tried his best. And his father's voice, crystal clear, told him something that Ozzy had never dared to believe in life. "I was never disappointed in you, son. I was proud of you for trying." That revelation shattered the armor, dismantled the persona, and crystallized the man's true desire to rest as John from Birmingham, the scared, striving boy he had always been, not the Prince of Darkness. This is why Sharon Osbourne fought relentlessly to honor his wishes. She understood what even his own children initially did not. The humbleness of the grave was not a rejection of his legacy. It was an embrace of it. It was a final act of authenticity, a chance to finally lay down the burdens of 50 years of trying to prove himself to a world that adored a myth while ignoring the man. Sharon knew that keeping this promise might tear the family apart. And indeed it did. Arguments flared, legal threats loomed, emotions ran raw, and the media circled. Yet she persisted, because she loved John from Birmingham more than she revered Ozzy Osbourne. The leaked photos didn't just capture Sharon's devotion. They captured something far greater. Around the simple grave, people began leaving their own offerings. Letters, drawings, small tokens of remembrance that had nothing to do with fame or wealth. Sobriety chips, drawings from children, letters from people who had found courage in Ozzy's honesty and vulnerability. This modest patch of earth, once destined to be a silent marker, began transforming into a sanctuary, a place where the man behind the myth was remembered not for chaos, but for the lives he touched. And in those private moments, as Sharon knelt with her head bowed, whispering promises into the quiet morning air, a new story was being written. A story that the world had never expected. A story that wasn't about music, fame, or outrage, but about love, loyalty, and the power of understanding someone completely, even after they are gone. The camera captures Sharon's lips again. "I kept my promise. John, I kept every single one." In that statement lies the truth. Ozzy Osbourne's final wish was not about being remembered as larger than life. It was about finally being seen, finally being understood, and finally being at peace, and so the world waits. Fans continue to visit, leaving notes and tokens, witnessing a legacy not defined by platinum records or sold-out arenas, but by the quiet courage of a man who dared to ask to be remembered as he truly was. The Osbourne family remains fractured, lawyers still involved, arguments ongoing, but amid the turmoil, a single simple truth shines through. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is honoring a promise, even when the world cannot understand it, even when it comes at a personal cost. The story doesn't end here, because what Sharon Osbourne did for John from Birmingham has only just begun to ripple outward. changing not just how his family sees him, but how the world begins to grasp the true man behind the legend. And in the next chapter, unseen letters, secret instructions, and the slow, painful process of reconciliation will show that a humble gravestone can carry a power no monument ever could. A power to heal wounds left by decades of fame, fortune, and misunderstood love. This is only the beginning. What happened at that simple grave will change everything you thought you knew about Ozzy Osbourne and the promise that Sharon kept against all odds. The mornings at the cemetery had a rhythm all their own. Sharon Osbourne arrived before sunrise, carrying a thermos of coffee, a folded newspaper tucked under her arm, and the quiet determination that had carried her through decades of life with Ozzy. She laid out 4 folding chairs with careful precision, 1 for herself, 3 for the children who might or might not show up. The air was always crisp, sometimes misty, with dew clinging to the grass and the faint, comforting smell of earth freshly turned. There was a sacredness to these moments, an intimacy that transcended grief. Sharon would sit quietly, reading headlines aloud, as if he were still there beside her, listening to the news of the world and their small, private universe all at once. And for the first time in months, she felt a tentative hope that perhaps slowly, the family could begin to find each other again at this simple, unassuming grave. Jack was the first to break the ice. One Tuesday morning, cameras were absent, lawyers were absent, the weight of expectation lifted for once. He arrived quietly, hands shoved deep into his pockets, eyes fixed on the simple granite stone that read, "John from Birmingham." He tried his best. For weeks, Jack had resisted. He had wanted grandeur, recognition, a monument befitting a rock legend. Yet here he was, drawn not by fame or legacy, but by a force stronger than pride, a longing for understanding, for reconciliation. Sharon smiled faintly as she gestured to the empty chair beside her. Jack hesitated, then sat, letting the early morning sun warm his shoulders. No words were spoken at first. Silence, deep and profound, filled the space between them. Then Sharon began to read aloud from the newspaper, the mundane news of the day grounding them in reality, reminding them of the life that continued beyond sorrow. Jack listened, at first stiffly, then slowly, as if opening a door he had kept locked for too long. Kelly came the next day, hesitant, unsure, carrying a small bundle wrapped in tissue paper. She knelt before the headstone, eyes brimming, and laid down the contents. A photo of the family dog that Ozzy had adored, a note in her own handwriting, and a tiny drawing she had made as a child. Tears spilled freely, unashamed as she traced her fingers over the granite, whispering apologies to a father she had long viewed through the lens of a legend rather than a man. Amy followed by the end of the week, bearing her first Grammy nomination letter, a deeply personal artifact she had never shared with anyone, symbolizing both her achievement and the vulnerability she carried. Together, the 3 children began to take turns visiting, leaving items that had nothing to do with fame, nothing to do with outward appearances. These were tokens of intimacy, respect, and the gradual reconstruction of a family fractured by grief and misunderstanding. And then came the revelations hidden in Ozzy's will, instructions so shocking they threatened to reignite old conflicts. His estate, vast and intricate, was not to be used to glorify himself posthumously. Most of it was designated for struggling musicians and their families, those who had suffered quietly in the shadows, much like he once had. Monument building, tribute concerts, merchandising deals, and films about Ozzy Osbourne were explicitly forbidden. Each child stood silent as Sharon explained that the will contained provisions, substantial trusts for them individually, yes, but conditional on their honoring Ozzy's final wishes without objection. Contest the will, attempt to challenge it, or refuse to support Sharon in carrying out his instructions, and they would forfeit everything except a minimal stipend. The magnitude of his foresight stunned them, the audacity of his plan both infuriating and humbling. Ozzy had not merely thought about his death, he had orchestrated it to shape the living, to teach lessons about humility, loyalty, and love that extended far beyond fame. Sharon became the living guardian of Ozzy's true legacy, navigating pressures from record labels, Hall of Fame committees, and family alike. She defended his memory with an unwavering resolve, insisting that John from Birmingham, the man behind the myth, be honored above all. Friends close to the family describe her courage as unparalleled, a quiet strength under fire that no one could have predicted. She loved him more than she loved the legend, one insider whispered. Sharon's days became a balancing act between bureaucracy, grief, and moral responsibility. At every turn, she faced arguments demanding monuments, memorials, and commercial exploitation of a life that had once been larger than life itself. But her defiance was not born from obstinacy, it was born from love, from understanding that Ozzy's peace, his human truth, was worth any sacrifice. As word spread, something extraordinary began to happen around that simple grave. Fans, inspired by Sharon's devotion and Ozzy's humility, began visiting from across the globe. They brought folding chairs of their own, letters of thanks, tokens of remembrance, even small personal items that reflected their own struggles, triumphs, and lives touched by the music. It was no longer a site of celebrity, it had become a sanctuary. Stories poured in online, parents describing how their children had learned courage from Ozzy's life, individuals sharing how his struggles had given them hope, young musicians detailing how a note or a song from him had rekindled their ambition. The simple gravestone became a symbol not of fame or notoriety, but of human connection, vulnerability, and resilience. In ways that no stage, no stadium, no platinum record could achieve, John from Birmingham had touched the world more deeply than anyone imagined. And yet, the most profound transformation was within the family itself. Jack, Kelly, and Amy slowly began to find each other in that sacred space. Conversations started tentatively, apologies offered, memories shared, tears and laughter mingling in the cool morning air. Sharon, as always, was at the center, holding a letter, a final message from Ozzy she had saved for this precise moment, a message intended to bring them together once the initial waves of grief and resentment had passed. She read aloud with deliberate calm, her voice carrying over the quiet cemetery. If you're all sitting together reading this, it means Sharon kept her hardest promise. Not the one about my grave, but the one about keeping our family together, even when I'm no longer here to resolve conflicts. Trust each other. Support each other. Remember that love matters more than anything else. The words landed like stones in water, rippling through each heart present. For the first time since the funeral, the family was quiet together, not in discord, but in understanding. Sharon watched as Jack knelt, placing a folded note beside the headstone. He didn't speak at first, only breathed, the exhale carrying the weight of months of misunderstanding, of anger, of grief slowly being released. Then Kelly added her own tribute, a drawing she had done as a child, now grown but still deeply connected to the father she had misunderstood. Amy followed with her Grammy letter, placing it gently, a symbol of achievement and vulnerability. For the first time, the grave was not just Ozzy's resting place. It was the nexus of a family learning to honor one another, to reconcile their differences, and to embrace the man behind the legend. Each day brought small miracles. Sharon continued her ritual, setting out chairs even when no one else came, signaling that the space was always open, that love and connection could be returned at any time. Visitors noticed, and families across the country began adopting the practice themselves. Folding chairs appeared at graves where conversations had long been silenced, letters were left where only flowers had been placed before, and connections that had frayed over years slowly began to mend. What had started as a single act of devotion to a husband became a global lesson. Being human, being vulnerable, being present, mattered more than grandeur, more than fame, more than wealth. The story of Ozzy Osbourne, the man behind the myth, was no longer confined to music or headlines. It was a living example of resilience, authenticity, and the transformative power of love. Sharon's perseverance had done more than honor Ozzy's wishes. It had redefined the notion of legacy. The court battles that had loomed dissolved quietly as Jack and Kelly, seeing the truth, dropped their legal challenges. The family fortune was distributed according to Ozzy's instructions, with a focus on philanthropy and empowerment rather than self-glorification. More importantly, the family found a pathway back to each other, fragile at first, yet undeniable. They began to understand that the humble gravestone, the simple stone marked with 6 words, was never meant to diminish their father's legacy. It was meant to illuminate it in the most profound way possible. As the weeks turned into months, the cemetery became a sanctuary of sorts. Sharon arrived each morning with the same ritual, joined at times by her children, and the presence of family brought a quiet strength to the site. Visitors witnessed the gestures of love, the notes, the small tokens, the conversations whispered into the morning air. And in that simplicity, In that quiet devotion, a legacy was taking shape far greater than any monument could provide. It was a legacy of understanding, of compassion, of honoring the human spirit. And it was taking root not just in one family, but across the hearts of thousands inspired by the story. The photos of these visits spread across social media, creating a chain reaction of empathy and reflection. Families who had once been estranged began leaving letters at the graves of their own loved ones, small acts of reconciliation and remembrance ignited by the courage of a widow keeping a promise. The gravestone of John from Birmingham became a symbol, a place where human connection was prioritized over spectacle, where truth outweighed illusion, and where love, simple, quiet, patient love, proved stronger than any record sold, any tour completed, or any stage presence maintained. And through it all, Sharon remained the steadfast anchor. Each morning she read aloud, each note carefully placed, each chair arranged just so, served as a reminder to all who came. Here lies a man who tried his best, and here stands a woman who loved him enough to ensure he was finally remembered as he truly was. It was an act of courage, of devotion, and of humanity that few could fully comprehend, and yet its impact was unmistakable. The messages she read from Ozzy, the whispers to his grave, the letters from family, all of it created a living dialogue across time and space. Jack, Kelly, and Amy came to understand that their father's final wishes were not about rejection or obscurity. They were about peace, about closure, about the chance to finally see the man beneath the myth, to embrace the boy from Birmingham who had dared to dream, dared to love, and dared to be human. Every day, as Sharon finished her reading, she folded the newspaper, sipped the last of her coffee, and glanced at the empty chairs she had prepared for her children. Sometimes they were there, sometimes not. But in every instance, the promise she had made was being honored. The world might have seen a simple headstone, unremarkable to outsiders, but those who knew its story, those who had walked the path of grief and love alongside Sharon, understood that it was monumental in ways no statue could ever match. And the ripple effect continued. Other families visiting the cemetery began leaving small items, folding chairs, notes, reminders that they too could reconnect with loved ones, that they too could honor the human essence rather than the public persona. The gravestone had become more than a memorial. It was a blueprint for reconciliation, a symbol of vulnerability, and a testament to the enduring power of a promise kept. Sharon's commitment, unwavering in the face of conflict, criticism, and personal heartache, had not only fulfilled Ozzy's wishes, but had also catalyzed healing, forgiveness, and connection that extended far beyond what anyone could have imagined. And somewhere in that quiet, misty morning air, the gravestone of John from Birmingham bore witness to a transformation. What had begun as an act of devotion, a private promise between two people, had blossomed into something profoundly public and enduring. A legacy that would teach the world that being human, being present and being true to oneself is the greatest gift of all. The gravel crunch beneath feet, the soft rustle of letters exchanged, the folding chairs lined like markers of hope, all served as proof that even in death, love can guide, heal, and inspire. The letters continued to appear, messages from people across the globe, notes from fans whose lives had been touched by Ozzy's honesty, by his struggle, by the courage of a man who had lived fully, yet longed to be understood simply as John. Sharon's daily visits, the careful arrangement of chairs, the reading aloud of mundane news alongside profound messages from Ozzy, had created a sacred rhythm, a ritual of remembrance, a living monument not made of stone or bronze, but of empathy, memory, and connection. In this quiet revolution, Jack, Kelly, and Amy found not just a father's legacy, but a father's love, a blueprint for family unity, and the understanding that the greatest gift Ozzy could leave was not fame, not fortune, not spectacle, but the courage to be human, the courage to forgive, and the courage to love. And as the sun rose higher over the cemetery, illuminating the simple granite stone, the folding chairs, and the notes scattered around it, it became clear that Sharon's promise had not only honored Ozzy, it had changed everything. The world was watching, learning, and quietly, profoundly being transformed alongside them. This is more than a grave. It is a testament to love, humanity, and the courage to honor a promise. The legacy of John from Birmingham lives on, not in monuments, not in records, but in the hearts of those willing to see, to feel, and to understand. And this is only the beginning.